Hello, everyone, and welcome to This is a Talk Show. I'm Kristin Mueller-Heaslip, and I'm going to start today by singing one of my favorite songs by Francis Poulenc. This is actually one of a pair of songs on poems by Max Jacob, and I love these songs partly because they're cool, but also because they're about experiences that are a bit remote, but also very relatable. So if you speak French, you might understand some of what this song is about. It's about having some really, really weird neighbors. Les trois dames qui jouaient du bugle tard dans leur salle de bain ont pour maître un certain mufle qui n'est là que le matin. L'enfant blanc qui prend des crabes avec la main, ne dit pas une syllabe, c'est un fils adultérin. Trois mères pour cet enfant chauve, une seule suffisait bien. Leur père est nabab mais pauvre, il le traite comme un chien. Cœur des muses, tu m'aveugles, c'est moi qu'on veut jouer du bugle. Au pont d'Iéna le dimanche, un écriteau sur la manche. And now let me welcome back your host, Adam Bailey.
Hello, everybody, and thank you, Kristen, and thank you, everyone, for joining us today. We have a wonderful show for you. But first, let's get this out of the way. The obligatory part of every talk show these days. That's right. America's Trump dump. Now, when last we saw you, America had just made the wise choice of voting out President Donald J. Trump and putting Joe Biden in his stead. Now, normally this would kick off something called the lame duck period, in which case we would all get very bored with American politics and move on to the next thing. Of course, this isn't ordinary times. This is the Trump presidency. And so, of course, we couldn't move on to other things. We had to deal with shenanigans. Trump is making insane stories up about widespread voter fraud that goes across the nation, across the globe. It involves phantom toll booths and ghosts of communist pasts. And he's sending lawyers out to swing states in order to make these arguments for him in the courts. Now, these lawyers are stuck with the impossible task of saying one version of reality to TV cameras, but then having to go into the courtrooms and say something called, I don't know, the truth. You see, these lawyers, if they perjured themselves in court by saying the things that Trump has been telling them to say, they would face real life consequences of being disbarred and losing their licenses. Now, Trump's main lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, has had yet another public meltdown, this time literally. And as the entire world leaned into the idea that perhaps this is the man that Donald Trump has pushed the furthest into madness, Randy Quaid, 90s movie actor, stepped forward, said, "Hold my beer," and started tweeting. Now, we'll get to Randy Quaid just a little bit later. But first, this week was American Thanksgiving, something I like to call Yanksgiving. And Donald Trump fulfilled a tradition of pardoning a turkey, Michael Flynn. And he also decided to finally go and have a conference with the press, breaking 3 weeks of silence and speaking to them from this teeny tiny little desk. Now, talking to the public from this tiny desk on Thanksgiving forced a lot of Americans to think of the children's table, and Twitter ran with that idea. Here's an image of Trump being compared to a small child, and also here. Now, Some historians, not some historians, all historians, wanted to remind people that this small portable presidential desk has been used by many, many presidents, including the two most popular presidents of the past 40 years, Ronald Reagan and Barack Hussein Obama. But you'll notice that the difference between those two presidents and Donald J. Trump isn't the size of the desk, it's the size of the crowds of people around them. So not only does Donald Trump look like a child in this picture, he also looks, well, lonely. There's Mr. Lonely. He's got nobody to call on the phone. Well, except for, Fox News. But that's not the point. At this press conference, Donald Trump finally conceded in his own way. He said that he would leave the White House on January 20th if Joe Biden was the person that the Electoral College voted into office as president. And we all saw the end of this horrific saga coming into clear focus when, wait for it, the next morning, Joe Biden's vote tally went above a historic mark of 80 million votes, which of course drove Donald Trump into a fit of rage. He retconned what he had said the day before and told the public that Joe Biden could only enter the White House if he could prove that every single one of these 80 million votes was a legal ballot. And we're back into the mire all over again. And this, my friends, oddly enough, reminds me of the hit CBC sitcom, How I Met Your Mother, only this time with more, fascism. And yes, I know I left Allison Hannigan there. I don't know why I did that. She doesn't deserve that. And yes, Mike Pence has cleavage. Don't try and think about that too much. In fact, just take that image down. For those of you who don't know, How I Met Your Mother was a hit romantic comedy on CBS where the main character told the story from his perspective 30 years in the future, which caused a craze among fans where they would interpret the show to try and figure out how it was going to end. They obsessed over every little detail, sharing information on websites, almost conspiracy sites. Ink was spilled over every word of dialogue, every costume choice. How would Ted Mosby finally meet the mother? But then, a year before the show was supposed to end, CBS, because it was a hit, decided to offer the show an extra season. And the producers took them up on that offer, saddling their writers with the impossible task of taking what should have been a 2-episode finale and stretching it out over a 24-episode season, turning the inevitable conclusion of the show into a long and painful march, which satisfied no one. A lot like this end of presidency. I said at the beginning of the monologue that this is what people call a lame duck period in the presidency. But considering a lot of people call Donald Trump America's TV president, I think we should reframe that term just for him and call it the jumped the shark period of his presidency. Personally, I can't wait for this show to be over, and no spin-offs, please. And with that, I'd like to welcome back to your screens your co-host for today, Kristin Mueller-Heaslip. How are you doing, Kristin?
I'm good. How are you?
I am great. What have you been up to?
Oh God, I don't know. Well, that thong song video came out.
That thong song video did come out. It's making a little bit of a splash over there on YouTube.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that you debuted it here, and I'm glad that all of our audience got to see that.
Yeah.
And a lot of mysterious unnamed men in all of their thongy glory.
I named them. You're named in the show notes. Sorry.
Unnamed men.
Unnamed.
No one will know who they're seeing.
Very unobvious who all of those completely named men are. I don't know. We had to skip last week because I was working, so I spent like a whole solid weekend staring at a Zoom screen, which is making me very glad to be here and only staring at one person at a time, up to three. And getting ready for the holidays, and I don't know. Do you remember? I have something to plug, Adam. Can I plug something?
Sure.
And you, instead of underwear this week. Do you remember October 24th's guest, Alex Eddington, who was on to talk about that album he and I did together?
Yes.
Well, pre-sales are now available on Bandcamp. Here you go.
Oh, that is amazing.
Yep.
And is the thong song on this album?
If you wish really hard, you can pretend you're playing the thong song while you listen to it.
Alex Eddington is a fabulous composer.
Yeah.
We did get to hear parts of this album. This is something that I am looking forward to purchasing and getting to add to my collection of music. Anything else exciting happening in your life? I think I saw you tweeting about something.
Yes. So there's some exciting news about Brussels sprouts. I don't know if
this is what this show is all about. Exciting news about those tiny details in your life. Tell us about Brussels sprouts.
Well, do you remember being a child and thinking that Brussels sprouts were disgusting? And then
my family was white trash. We never ate a Brussels sprout when I was a child.
Okay. Well, if you had as a small child encountered a Brussels sprout and you're older than say 30, 25, you were not wrong, because apparently science someone on Twitter told a story about how a scientist in the mid 1990s used agricultural engineering basically in order to make Brussels sprouts taste good, because they actually did used to suck. So it wasn't just us.
Yeah, like a lot of people were blaming it on their parents. Like my parents must have not known how to cook because their Brussels sprouts were gross, but my Brussels sprouts are great. But it turns out that some dude found a bunch of heirloom Brussels sprout seeds from like a seed vault and then bred them and something else and like grafted plants together. So we're basically eating mutant Brussels sprouts.
Yeah, and they're great. I love them. Slice them really, really thin and fry them in a lot of olive oil with garlic and salt. It's great.
I mean, that's good, but also deep fried, tossed in balsamic vinaigrette glaze and salt and garlic is also very, very good. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Brussels Sprout Show, where we talk about Brussels sprouts. Now, since these are mutant Brussels sprouts, do you think there's a possibility that this is where the COVID virus came from?
I think anything's possible, but I don't know if science has quite caught up to that yet. So maybe you should, I don't know, try to get some kind of grant to investigate it.
I mean, arts funding in Ontario is going to all sorts of wacky things right now. So maybe I can get them to fund my play on Brussels sprouts and their link to COVID-19. But I don't know if I'm going to win that argument. One thing that is exciting me right now when it comes to COVID-19 is that we have not one, not two, but 3 COVID vaccines on the horizon. And I've heard news that there might be a 4th one about to break through as well to pass the 3rd stage of trials. So I'm really excited about that. Do you have any plans for your post-COVID future?
I have a slide for it, Adam. Do you want to see it?
Oh.
Let's go now to Adam predicts the future. Though actually should be both of us predicts the future. So what do you think life is going to be like once we have all gotten a vaccine? Because it's going to take a while, right? And we are low on the priority list for as healthy young-ish people for who's going to be getting it. So how about this? Your top 3 predictions of what the future will be like once the vaccine is around.
So I think that we are going to be in some weird ADHD stage of like mass culture when the vaccine comes out, because we're going to have that 2 weeks back to school, like where everyone's focused on routine and getting themselves back in order. As someone who was a waiter for years, I know the first 2 weeks of September and the first 2 weeks after New Year's and the holidays are done are just dead, because everyone's like super focused on like getting themselves back into work mode. But we're also going to have that party you have after graduation happening at the exact same time. And on top of that, we're going to have an obligation to visit grandma. So we're going to be back to work, drinking our ass off, and required to visit relatives we haven't seen in a year all at once. Basically, my prediction is that the first time you go out for brunch, your waiter is going to stink of booze. That is my prediction.
Excellent.
What's your biggest prediction?
I think there's going to be a baby boom. Births are way down, because like a depressingly large number of babies are conceived by accident. And when people are not around each other, fewer of these happy accidents arise. So I think once people start hooking up face to face again, I think there's going to be a little mini baby boom. Though I do know someone who has had a baby since the pandemic began.
I know a couple, but they were always pregnant before the pandemic. I don't know anyone who got pregnant on purpose during this pandemic.
Well, they would be born now. So if you know anyone who's having a baby now, then they are, that's a pandemic baby. But it's not a lot of them. So I can see why. I can't imagine running out and thinking like this is a great time to have a baby.
No, I think there's going to be post-COVID a lot more dog bites. That's another big thing. I've made that prediction since the beginning. A lot of people got dogs at the beginning of the pandemic as puppies, and they raised them without them being socialized around a bunch of people. And when they were around people, the humans were all avoiding each other. So all these pack animals, when suddenly a whole bunch of people start coming near your alpha human dog, they're going to want to defend you. And I think there's going to be like a huge amount of dog bites. That's another big prediction I have. So drunk waiters and dog bites are my two big predictions going forward. And pop-ups. I think there's going to be no one's going to know where things will succeed in like once the pandemic's done, like the population's moved around. So I think people who do pop-ups are going to be really successful in the post-pandemic future.
That's a good catch. I like those predictions. I'm just saying probably babies getting bitten by dogs. That's all fun. And I think probably like this is maybe too optimistic, but there's some chances for stuff to get better. Like, if you live in a shitty neighborhood with nothing in it, well, maybe there's lots of people with energy and time and nothing to do. And I think with a little assistance, maybe we could some good things could be made to happen in the post-pandemic life once we can actually leave the house again and go and hang out in person.
Well, I know someone who's great at making predictions and making all sorts of cultural commentary, and he's our next guest. Remember we had Bill Antui from Bad Gay Movies Equals Bitchy Gay Men on the show a couple weeks back. Well, we have our second guest from that podcast with us today, and that is Daniel Krolik. So let's bring Daniel Krolik up to everybody's screens. Here he is. Hi, Daniel.
Hi.
How are you doing today?
I'm dandy. I successfully avoided the now weekly anti-mask rally that goes up Spadina, seemingly every Saturday afternoon. So glad that's over with. So I'm good.
That is fantastic. I'm glad you avoided anti-maskers. I thought they were all at the barbecue joint in town. So
no, they came to spread their love, and this time they were blaring "We're not going to take it" while they were marching up Spadina. And I doubt that they had the consent of Dee Snider to play that.
A gender non-conforming heavy metal artist is the person the anti-maskers are now. All the right-wing people
we'll see about that.
Steal left-wing music because right-wing music sucks. Like that is.
And honestly, some of the very limited joy that we got out of the election lead up was artists telling the Republican Party, no, sorry, you can't use my song.
Now, Daniel, one of the reasons that we had you on the show is because you're so good at culture and cultural reads. We were going to ask you about your top non-holiday entertainment choices, but this week has brought someone that you have a personal connection to into the media spotlight for the first time in a number of years, and that is Randy Quaid. Now, you are not just a podcaster and a cultural commentator, you're also an actor and a writer, and you wrote a play about Randy Quaid a couple of years back, right?
I did. I wrote it with Amanda Barker.
Okay, can you tell the audience just a little bit about who Randy Quaid is pre this week?
Yeah, sure.
like in 1 minute or less.
I'll try. Randy Quaid he was a really popular character actor for like 30 years in Hollywood. He got his start in a lot of very classic 1970s movies. Peter Bogdanovich used him all the time. He was in Last Picture Show, Paper Moon. He got an Oscar nomination for Best Supporting Actor in this really great film called The Last Detail. And he eventually achieved later day fame as Cousin Eddie in the National Lampoon's movies. And in 2010, he was married to Evie Quaid. him and Evie fled California for Vancouver on the claims that there was a cabal of star whackers that were trying to bankrupt them and their careers, trying to kill them, because they had all there were all these celebrity jets in Hollywood at the time that they were very close to, like Chris Penn and David Carradine. Amanda, my good friend Amanda, we were just sort of trying to figure out what to write about. And there was just this rash of articles about the Quaids. And there was one in, I think, Vanity Fair, which sent their photographer to the motel in British Columbia where they were holed up in. And there were all these like really disturbing, sexy pictures in the motel room. So I sort of, for a lark, I texted Amanda and I was like, well, why don't we write about this? And she took me to task. So we wrote this play about them and about how they were, on the run from the law. And our hook into it was, at the time, we both genuinely believed that they were sincere. It was so easy to believe that Randy and Evie legitimately, genuinely thought that this cabal of star whackers was out to get them and to ruin their lives and to kill them. So that was sort of our hook. And our second hook was they had all these people around them dying and they needed to sort of emotionally justify how and why all of their friends were suddenly dying. So we totally bought into it, hook, line, and sinker. We had a run at Fringe. They ended up showing up. We had this insanely bizarre night where we caught up with them. And even then we were given the impression that they full on believed what they were preaching, what they were buying.
Oh, I believe that they believe what they're preaching. This week, Randy Quaid went onto Twitter and did a kind of creative reading of one of Donald Trump's tweets, which then Donald Trump tweeted the video.
Yeah, I saw the retweet, and full disclosure,
well, you're about to see it again. So
video,
Kristin, can you put that on? I'd like to see what Daniel thinks about.
Fox News daytime ratings have completely collapsed. Weekend daytime, even worse. Very sad to watch this happen. But they forgot the one.
That's as much as I'll ever listen to of that. Sorry, it just creeped me out.
No, it's great. I was about to say that I haven't seen the video yet, and I think I'm satiated.
You're
good.
satiated.
Yeah.
Is that the Randy Quaid that you met?
Yeah, I mean, no, it was the Randy Quaid that I met. He didn't come at me about Fox News having low ratings because it was the Obama era, so times were simpler then. But what struck me about meeting them when we did, and we only met them once, was they had this way of making all of these beliefs and all of these theories very, very sensible. So you were talking to them, and like I remember talking to him about, Bogdanovich and Hal Ashby and all these directors that he worked with, and all of a sudden, he was talking to me about the conspiracy against him by Actors Equity. So he both him and Evie sort of had this way of really legitimizing whatever was going on in their brains. Unlike the 12 seconds of video that we just saw.
I mean, if people want to go on Twitter and find it, there's another one where he upstages what Clint Eastwood did with the chair. So he's got two creative readings of Donald Trump tweets on Twitter right now. But before we switch to our next guest, I do want to give you a chance to tell the audience about your non-holiday required holiday viewing list. So if we want to bring up those, Daniel, what things do you think people should watch this year over the holidays?
I have three.
You have three,
right? I have three. So the first one is the HBO TV show, which I try to force on everybody to no avail. Nobody has ever taken me up on it. But it's Damon Lindelof's and Tom Perrotta's The Leftovers. I watched it for the first time in 2017, and it absolutely gutted me. And I just did a rewatch this past fall, and I don't think there is a more 2020 show in existence than The Leftovers.
Fantastic. And what's next?
Haha. This is a film called Dogtooth. This is written and directed by Yorgos Lanthimos, who went on to direct The Favorite, which is a wonderful movie, but has a very notable Oscar fraud from a couple of years ago. But before he broke into Hollywood, he directed a series of absolutely batshit crazy, violent, funny, bizarre Greek movies. And this was sort of his first one to break through. And again, this is sort of totally in tune with our current pandemic quarantine times, because it's about a father who keeps his family prisoner in a gigantic compound. And it's about how he does and doesn't let them interact with the world outside.
Ooh, dark.
Yeah, it really is.
Do you have something lighter for the holidays?
I do. I love this recommendation so much. So there's the Jerry Lewis Telethon, the Muscular Dystrophy Association Telethon that he's been doing for decades, now has a YouTube channel, and they are releasing telethon performances from their catalog. So my world begins and ends with Lainey Kazan. So at 4:00 in the morning a few weeks ago, I found a clip of Lainey Kazan singing Copacabana sometime in 1980. And I think just watching it will give you the clap, because it's just so sexy and it's so 70s and it's just balls to the wall. But there's like Liza and Sammy Davis Jr. and Lorna Luft and Joey Heatherton and all these Broadway clips and like dance troops and mime troops, and it just goes on and on. It's the most delicious rabbit hole to fall into.
Well, that sounds delightful, Daniel, and thank you for sharing that with us. Now,
you're welcome.
You're going to be back for the news, and you've just brought up variety clips. And speaking about variety, we have a comedian joining us as our second guest today. I don't know if you know him, but he is fantastic. He's one of the top comedians in Toronto. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Vong Sho.
Hey, what up, viewers? So at the start of 2020, I made a really big decision. This was before the pandemic started and we knew what was going on, but I decided to quit my incredibly stable day job and pursue comedy full time. Now, obviously, 2020 has not gone, the way that I had expected, but it was still the right decision because my old job was a bit of a dead end. Because see, before I was a comedian, I used to work at the National Post writing obituaries. And I actually learned a lot about life and the importance of leaving a legacy. And I've got some really important advice for all the viewers today is when you after the show, you need to take out your photo album, look through your photos and choose your obituary photo. Like, this is so important. You do not understand how important it is. Like, you think you can trust your loved ones, but grieving family members do not choose good photos. Like, there was this one grieving widow who submitted a photo of her husband eating a donut. I'm like, I had to call her up and I was like, I'm sorry, ma'am. I know your husband is a cop, but this photo is not appropriate for publication. And now, I don't want to be too hard on my old customers because I know they're going through a tough time. They're doing the best they could. And so I would always try to do the best I could for their loved ones to leave their legacy. But unfortunately, from time to time, I would make mistakes. Like, there was this one obituary in big, bold letters. It was supposed to say, "It will be lonely without you." And I missed a letter and instead I wrote, "It will be lovely without you." Yeah, one letter makes a big difference. And that wasn't even the worst. Like, there's this other obituary where it was supposed to say his closest Uncle Ted gave the eulogy. And instead I wrote his closet Uncle Ted gave the eulogy. And so obviously Uncle Ted was not happy with me. at all. But speaking of unsatisfied customers, prior to the second shutdown, I was able to do a little bit of comedy, and like I'm very openly gay on stage, and so sometimes I get like approached by like crazy people after. And this one show, after the show, I got approached by these two Chinese religious protesters, and one of them was like, "Were you molested as a child? I heard all gays were molested as children." And I was like, hell no. I said I was gay, not an altar boy. Like, I think you're projecting your church problems onto me. And then the other one snapped back and he was like, oh, you really shouldn't speak like that. Jesus died for your sins. I was like, bitch, please. Jesus never came to China. Like, I'm sorry the dude died, but that has nothing to do with me. Like, unless you want me to write his obituary. And that's my time. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Vong. That was fantastic. Now, I had no idea that you worked for the National Post before you started off comedy. I've only ever met you as a comedian. And yeah, and you've done lots, not just in comedy, but in organizing comedians. You work with the gay comedy show that they do at the Comedy Bar.
Yeah, Gay AF. I started that show with Robert Watson, who's amazing. He's been running it on his own for a little while now, but it's he's a great friend, and I'm so happy to see the success with that show.
And you also have a show that's happening online every week too. That's a bit more like, and even it's a bit more specific.
Yeah, it's called Rice. It's sort of like a talk show online where we give the Asian perspective on culture, entertainment, and trending topics. We take live interactive questions and stuff. And yeah, it's every Sunday at 8 p.m.
Every Sunday at 8 p.m. Wow, I'm impressed. We do this every other week and it's a lot of work. If you're doing a show every Sunday, my hat off to you, sir. That is fantastic. And what sort of comedians do you have on that show? Who can we look forward to seeing this week?
So on that one, it's a consistent panel. So it's me and the amazing Leonard Chan, one of the best comedians in all of Toronto, and a new up and coming comedian named Veronica Antipolo. She's so dynamic. She's really somebody to look out for.
And where can people find the show? Is it on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch? Where is this?
It pretty much streams everywhere: Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Periscope. Anywhere you can find it, just look up at Vong Sho. It's like Gong Show, but with a V, on basically any network you can think of, and it is streaming.
I've thought that joke with your name. I've never said that one out loud. It's a great name for show business. You have a fantastic showbiz name.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, try to keep it memorable. And I remember when I first started comedy, I would always have to like spell out my website, because back then you didn't have social media. And I was just like, okay, this is too complicated. I need something where I can just say really quick, here's what it is, without spelling it letter for letter.
Well, Vong, I know that you're used to giving your opinions on things. Are you up and ready for doing the news with us?
Absolutely.
Fantastic. Let's welcome back Kristin and welcome back Daniel Krolik for a segment that we like to call...
This is a news segment. So quick disclaimer, I've only just started doing this because I realized the news is a lot right now. But just in case you hadn't noticed, you know how all those like right-wing pundit types say, oh, we're not journalists, we're entertainers. Well, we really are not journalists, we are entertainers. So there are many important news stories which we will not be sharing today, because we just pick ones we think we're going to be able to be funny about. So if we didn't talk about something that's important, it's not because it's not important, it's because we didn't want to make jokes about it.
Can I just say that I love this image because it looks like an NBC affiliate from the 1970s with technical difficulties?
Thank you. I made it using a free logo generator website, which I have now forgotten what it is. So I can't remake it. Sorry.
It looks like sperm attacking a bird or coming out of a bird's butt.
Yeah, that's appropriate for
As if I wasn't horny enough already.
Okay, well, as we all know, we've seen the show before. Kristen's going to read out some news headlines, and then I'm going to try and get you guys to talk about them. So, Kristen, what is our first news story today?
Well, today in completely obvious news, 5 passengers test positive for COVID on the first Caribbean cruise to resume sailing. I saw this first as a Twitter thread where it was quite funny because it was like the story was like, I'm on the first cruise. And then it was like, oh, I'm in quarantine on the first cruise. It's like, oh, there's a COVID outbreak on the first cruise. So cruises are back, and predictably so is COVID on cruise ships.
It really redefines Billy Ocean's lyric Caribbean Queen. Now we're sharing the same thing.
Oh! Vong, can you top that?
You know, I think this is probably people who are bargain hunters who just want an extra long cruise because they pay for 7 days and they get quarantined. And guess what? They get cruise ship service for a whole month.
A whole month on a floating toilet. It's a dream come true.
Where did the ship dock from?
I'm afraid I don't remember. I'm sorry.
Like, is it an American ship? If it's Caribbean, I guess
Carnival.
Yeah.
But America has some Caribbean islands or territories, not just Puerto Rico, but also the U.S. Virgin Islands and one other that I can't remember. But they have a couple territories in the Caribbean. So you could just go from American Caribbean island to American Caribbean island.
Just more than anything, it's like the poor staff, like the poor waiters and cooks and cleaning staff, and like God forbid there are performers on that ship. That's the heartbreaker. Not the idiots that paid for it, but the people that needed to go back to work.
Oh my God. I'm pretty sure that you would still get a lot of Toronto comedians putting up their hand because they will do a show anywhere they're asked to.
Like who? I want names.
Literally everybody in Toronto will show up to any show. Unpaid.
Have you seen some of the dive bars we perform at in Toronto, Daniel? You performed at some of them.
I am a serious theatrical actor. I would never degrade myself.
That's not true. I was in a show with you called The Enchanted Crack House that we did in a bar and in a tent. So speaking about things which are also a little terrifying, here's some archaeological news. Aztec death whistles sound like human screams and may have been used as psychological warfare. I have to say, these look pretty cool and would make some excellent stocking stuffers.
I mean, I kind of like this story being in the list because, you know, the British and the Dutch were not the only conquering people who made horrific decisions. The Aztecs were also a conquering people who made horrific decisions. And when I saw this, like, there's no modern comparison to like a human scream whistle. If we tried to do this now, we would be sending 4th graders out who had just learned Mary Had a Little Lamb on recorder to the battlefield. Like that would be...
There's no modern equivalent, sure, that's correct, Adam. But also in this current time, everything is psychological warfare. Every time you step out of your house or your apartment, you are inundated with psychological warfare. Every time you pick up your phone or turn on your computer, it's psychological warfare coming at you.
Yeah, well, what I don't understand is like when you're making whistles or musical instruments or other things, you're usually making it so that they can make a sound that you can't as a human. So I'm like, why would you make a whistle that screams when you could just scream?
I think it's like a death scream. I think it's like a scream that you can't make unless you're like in horrific pain or like a 4-year-old at Yorkdale Mall. Like I think it's that.
I think protecting your voice. They didn't have, modern medicine. If you got news, you were done for. Your screaming days were over.
But I'd love to see like a children's toy that is marketed with that byline.
Psychological warfare. Do you know what? If my kids got a hold of those, it would be psychological warfare.
Yeah.
Everyone loves the Aztecs, the murderous Aztecs. They were cannibals. We all love them. It's the one cannibal culture that we're all like, yeah, I'd like to live back then.
Well, speaking of other horrible people from the Americas, Charles Koch is in the news. He gave some interview where he said, my bad for all of the things I've done to undermine democracy and, destroy the planet over the past lifetime. But he doesn't stop him from still funding these shit that's going on in the United States still. So what do you guys think? Charles Koch, is he really sorry or is he just full of it?
Well, I think if you
Daniel had the last couple, it's up to you.
Yeah, I think maybe now it's, for people who don't know, he was famously part of the Koch brothers. And I feel like because he's the surviving one and because his brother died first, he's going to try and be like, I'm the good brother. I'm the Mario. You're the Luigi. You died first. You forced me to do all this evil. So
what was wrong with Luigi?
He's tall and green and all the wrong things, but I don't know, I feel like he's trying to save his legacy and pin it all on his dead brother, saying like, he forced me to do this, I'm actually the good one.
Reasonable. Daniel, what do you think?
I mean, I think now if we Google white man apology, we know what's going to come up.
What is it going to be, a YouTube video where he's
just going to be a picture of Charles Koch?
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Well, bring society to the edge of destruction and be like, oops, my bad. Yeah. It's more like what you would see on Full House than what you're expecting from a billion.
It's okay. It's okay. He can just go to Europe and do poetry readings with Kevin Spacey.
Next.
Okay.
Here's another questionable decisions by old white men. Vatican unsure why Pope Francis account liked model's racy Instagram photo. So in a poor decision on my part, I did not include the racy Instagram photo in question in this slideshow. But yes, the Pope's official Pontifex account liked a not exactly like a safe for work, like maybe not quite safe for work, but not there's no nudity, but it was a sort of sexy schoolgirl photo. The Vatican was quick to say that the Pope does not run his own social media accounts, sadly enough. So this was some slip of the finger by a young Vatican staffer, or perhaps not young, but young at heart. So I also mostly picked this because of the picture, and just the Pope looks very ashamed.
Daniel, as the resident Jewish person this week, I think you get to talk about the Catholic issue
Right now, the Pope is in my good books, because didn't he come out also this week and say that not wearing a mask is unchristian? This also happened this week.
He's an okay Pope, as popes go. He's decent Pope.
Yeah, and I could also never put too much faith in a celebrity that doesn't run their own Instagram account.
Yeah, but he's really old, right? I mean, that's a lot to ask for a big public figure. I mean, like, he wasn't like...
Yeah.
I don't know. Glenn Close is 73 and she has the most magnificent Instagram account.
But she doesn't have to pope.
She does not have to pope.
She does not have to pope. No. Vong, what do you think about the Pope's racy photos?
I feel like he does run his own Instagram account, and I feel like he tried to give an apology, but then the PR team just remixed his words, because the words I'm hearing are schoolgirl, slip of the finger, young, Pope. I feel like he gave a different form of that sentence, and then with those exact words, and yeah, the PR team remixed it to be a little bit more suitable.
I also think if you're trying to apologize for liking a sexy photo, the terminology slip of the finger might not be the best to use.
I don't think they actually said that. I think that was just me paraphrasing, but that's good. You guys have made some comedy from it.
Vong, stop. Kristin, stop putting words in the Pope's mouth. I mean, he's vowed celibacy, but he's never vowed that he wouldn't look. So
yeah. And look, we're all horny in quarantine. Like, we're all frustrated and horny and missing touch. So, I can't blame anybody, least of all the Pope, for liking a sexy Instagram picture.
Although I am surprised that it's the Pope with the sensible shoes and not the ones with the red Pradas that made this mistake. I expected a different Pope.
When did we have like that creepy German Pope? Was that 2 popes ago, or
that was the last one with the red Pradas?
Yeah, he would definitely like a sexy Instagram pic with no
That guy's
qualms.
got a whole Instagram full of,
and he would never apologize about it either.
Oh yeah, I remember him, the Nazi Pope.
Yeah,
the Nazi Pope.
On that note, we have a new segment today called Toronto Appropriates Food. A bunch of stories about this came on, so we're going to share the best, the worst too with you. Owner of Toronto Broth Bar responds to accusations of cultural appropriation. I have a whole bit about how the kind of bone broth fad is stupid, because soup is soup, Like soup is like a food of when you need to feed your family and you open your fridge and you have like half a carrot and a can of chickpeas and like a potato and you have to make something out of that. It is not, and like making especially like soup out of bones is literally let's make the most of a scarce resource. It's not like a magic caveman food.
Yeah,
Anyway.
it's like Iron Chef for the working poor.
Exactly. But anyway, so this broth bar, which had a really also very gross Instagram with like weird like butts with dumplings on them and stuff like that. It was not nice. They were accused of cultural appropriation, probably right, and they've come back and done it. Their unsatisfying apology about it. And now you can get, in other food news, Jamaican patties with mac and cheese in them, which just seems very ill-advised. And like, did no one learn anything from the cronut burger fiasco? It's like some food should not be remixed together. So this concludes Toronto. Oops, wrong one. Toronto appropriates food. Any
but
thoughts?
wasn't the mac and cheese patties? Isn't that like notoriously Drake's favorite patty place in Toronto?
I don't know. Maybe.
I mean, the Jamaicans I know, which are very much like Italians with their like, this is the one way that you do this food, not the other way. Like there's the recipes are in stone.
Sure.
Some of them got upset about that, which, what Drake likes is what Drake likes. I don't know how to speak for Drake. Vong, what do you think about food appropriation?
It kind of makes sense that Drake likes a fusion of food style since he is a fusion of cultural parents from different cultures. So
he did have a bar mitzvah.
One of his parents is mac and cheese. The other parent is patty. So when he's eating that mac and cheese patty, he's eating himself. They should call that the Drake patty.
That, oh my goodness, you just answered the question. A lot of good food that we love nowadays comes from cultures blending with each other, which is a weird part about this. When it's Mexican food in the news, usually when that gets appropriated, someone from Mexico will stand up and be like, no, every one of your favorite tacos is a colonial culture or an immigrant culture coming in and mixing their food with our cornbread. And that's how that happens. But this stuff, like, as I said, like Jamaicans are the ones that I know are very feisty about like what qualifies as Jamaican food.
Yeah, I think it's similar with Asians. Like most Asians won't eat like Chinese food in Toronto because, the Toronto food culture is all about like deconstruction and fusion. And most of the time when I go eat, the first thing I'll order is a very basic recipe to make sure that the restaurant knows how to cook before I'll give anything else a try. So like Toronto proper just remixes a lot of food. Like I'm not mad at it. I'm like, as long as I can go somewhere to get the original, I don't care if somebody else does a remix. I just wish that the Toronto foodie culture would understand the foods before they deconstruct something. It's like when an artist tries to deconstruct something they don't understand, it just makes it worse.
That makes a lot. I absolutely 100% am with you on that, because you like, if both are available, it's okay. But if one starts to supersede the other, it's like ketchupy pad thai. Right? Like when every restaurant's pad thai had ketchup in it suddenly, and you're like, why did you ruin?
But that's how I first got introduced to pad thai. My favorite Toronto pad thai was always from the green room, which was the whitest, most industrial pad thai possible, which was just loads of ketchup and noodles.
Yeah, I will say that pad thai in itself is super white because so my parents had 2 Thai restaurants growing up, and I literally had never eaten pad thai. Like I literally didn't even know what pad thai was because it's literally just made for white people. So like to call like pad thai super like the whitest version, it literally is just for white people.
So we might as well just put ketchup on it because it's all the same.
Yeah, I literally had never heard of pad thai in my life. And then they're like, oh, it's the dish we make for white people. And I was like, oh, okay.
But there's a long history of that in North American culture too. Like that's the thing with a lot of this food. Although I do want to correct Kristin about pho not having magical properties, because if you've ever had a hangover in your entire life, pho is the thing that you go to. I worked in an office one day, and one of my coworkers was Vietnamese, and he could see that I had a couple drinks the night before, but was still functional enough to be at work. And he was like, "Hey, there's a secret place downstairs. Go past the McDonald's. It's supposed to be closed, but there's a little window. They'll serve you pho. Eat it. You'll come back up. You'll be fine." And I learned that pho is hangover heaven that day. And if someone tries to sell me magic broth and it isn't actually a pho that's going to kill my hangover and every other virus in my body, I'm not, that's a sin. Shame on her.
You know, perhaps this is expecting too much in continuity, but you do recall that Finland discovered the cure for the hangover, as we covered many episodes ago. So perhaps, I don't know, I'm just spitballing here, maybe that special magical component is actually in pho. So maybe it does work. But generally speaking, bone broth is a scam. Just make some damn soup. All right. I would love to hear. I really hope
what is the difference between, sorry, because I've never ordered bone broth from a restaurant. What is the difference between bone broth and soup?
Oh, it's like a paleo thing. You know, those people who think that you need to eat like a caveman, like they're like, no, this is like bone broth is like a magic food. And there's cases of like people like feeding bone broth to babies. And just a PSA, don't feed soup to a baby because that is too young to have solid food.
So
because
bone broth
it's really bad for them. It can kill them. It's got too much vitamin A in it.
For sure.
Yeah.
But so bone broth is literally just a bunch of bones in boiling water?
Yeah, you just make soup with bones. It's like making soup with bones, like you do.
So
it's how they make pho. Like the base broth for pho is
anyway, this isn't a cooking YouTube show.
Let's move on.
Yeah, let's move on. I really hope our panel has not seen this show because I would love you both to try to answer the question that is posed by this headline. And then I know the real answer, so I will tell you who was closest. Why was a Toronto sinkhole gurgling neon green liquid?
Oh.
Ooh. Vong.
It's the Adamson's barbecue runoff.
Vong, what's your theory?
Green, maybe to call it back. There was an explosion at a costume factory, and the costume factory is full of Luigi outfits because nobody wants to be Luigi for Halloween.
It was Waluigi who caused the explosion.
There you go.
It was just an Elphaba orgy. There were like it was like the night of 1,000 Elphabas, and they all just got naked and boned. This is just sort of like the bodily fluids that got secreted from that sexy Elphaba night.
So the real answer is a lot. Oh yeah, go ahead, Vong. Let's hear another theory.
I was gonna say, or it's bone soup made from Irish people.
Could be.
It's the stuffing for St. Patrick's Day Irish Jamaican patties in 2021.
It's the stuff, it's the stuff they put to make beer green. Yeah. Actually, what it is they were trying to find a leak or something like that, so they put some food safe or whatever unharmful green dye to see if it showed up in somewhere where it was not supposed to be. And of course, Toronto being completely falling apart, there was a sinkhole and some of it got in there, and that's why there was like the secret of the ooze happening on wherever that happened.
It wasn't Ghostbusters 2 happening in real life. That movie was not predictive.
What happened in Ghostbusters 2? Did somebody steal Sigourney Weaver's baby? Was
something
that the plot?
like that?
I know there's a painting that came to life. We don't have time for Ghostbusters 2.
No, we
On
don't.
to the next story.
Because you know what it's time for? It is time for, and I need to write a theme song for this, news from Finland. We keep calling up Finland because Finland is solving all of the world's problems. Finland ended homelessness. Finland cured the hangover. I forget what last happened in Finland, but Finland has this new historic government of like all women or something like that. And their prime minister is a cool lady. She is pro trans rights. She's pro everything that we would love in our leaders. And that's about it. Finland is great. End of news from Finland.
I love that.
Yeah.
Go Finland.
There's not an awful lot to say about that because it's like cool, like there's not many jokes that we can make about how great Finland is. But yeah.
No, she's not appropriating anything.
As far as we know.
Let's send J.K. Rowling to Finland for a decade, and maybe then we can read Harry Potter again.
Oh my God, it must be the most cognitive dissonance in the world for someone like J.K. Rowling. She's like, all woman government, my feminist heart is like, ugh, but they respect trans people and I'm a rad femme, so how do I said if women took over the government, like J.K. Rowling is like having a Wicked Witch of the West meltdown somewhere reading
Do
this.
you remember before all this bullshit when J.K. Rowling was the working class hero because she refused to be a billionaire?
Yeah.
Like the second that she earned $1 billion, she gave it back because she was like, no living person should actually be a billionaire. Like, how do you go from here to there?
You just get
radicalized. I mean, that's something that I'm always, I talk about, like normal people who we think are good, people who have good values get radicalized. And it's something that we should, instead of just scorning all the time, we should be watchful for and keep track of people, especially when they end up in communication circles that aren't observed. So if you have friends,
and get retweeted by Donald Trump.
But like, if you have friends that are going to church, because that's a big space, online video games, different chat rooms, people are isolated right now. If you know someone who you think might be getting radicalized, don't cut them off. Try and breach in and make them realize that they're wrong and people who love them.
Okay, guys, I just have to leave because I have to check up on Christy Alley. I just want to make sure she's okay.
Okay. Do we have any more stories, Kristen?
Yeah, we got 2 more. This is another one that there's maybe not too much to say about, but we would love to extend our congratulations to Edmonton comic book artist Kyle Charles, who is going to be working on Marvel's new Indigenous Artist series, which I have to say I can't remember the title of the book, but that is awesome. Very, very exciting for this artist. And maybe let's put this together with maybe perhaps a less illustrious art achievement. You get what you pay for. It's a restoration artist of the mysterious watch statue. I kind of actually love this, and I would love to see.
It looks like. Do you remember there was like a Sesame Street cartoon where like a bunch of things went onto an orange, and then she started singing Carmen?
No, I don't. But
from like the early 1980s, it looks like that.
Is this the same person who botched the painting? Like, is this another? Like...
No, that was a lady in Spain, and this guy I think is a professional, but just not a very good one. So,
but like, what is the vetting process to get these jobs?
I don't know. I want to say about Marvel and the Indigenous artists. It's nice seeing that Marvel is actually hiring minority people because not a lot of people know this, but they made a big press release talking about how they had this Asian artist. And I forget what his name was. It's like this, the first major Asian artist on a Marvel comic. And he had like this super Japanese name. And he was later found out it was really a white guy who was using a Japanese stage name.
No.
Yeah, look it up. It was like the biggest scandal. Well, to like comic book fans, is a big scandal.
That's like some JT Leroy shit.
Yeah, it's totally public. It's out there. So Marvel needs it. This is a step in the right direction. I'm hoping this actually is an Indigenous person and not a white person stealing an Indigenous identity. But with Marvel, I wouldn't put it past them.
Do you know someone did this in the cutthroat world of classical choral music and like band music, like the sort of stuff that's marketed to schools? Some guy was just like, he formed an alter ego as like with a Japanese woman's name and wrote some passable music and got it published in these kind of publishing houses and did this for a while until someone figured it out. I forget, like a couple months ago. But yeah,
we wonder why people get sensitive around issues of cultural appropriation.
We wouldn't get sensitive if people would just stop appropriating.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, outright stealing in this case. Well, everyone, this has been a fantastic Nooks segment. It ended a little bit on more of a downer than we normally like to, but that's fine because you're both hilarious guests to have. And if you need an upbeat bit of news, Bob Ross is going to have a card in the Magic the Gathering deck. So if you want to hack a little secret tree somewhere, you can do that. That's what happens at the end of the day. So before we go, Vong, please remind everyone where they can find you online.
I'm on every social channel. It's at Vong Sho. That's like Gong Show, but with a V.
Daniel Krolik?
You can stalk me on Instagram at KrolikD, KROLIKD, or look up BGM, Bad Gay Movies.
Fantastic. And of course, we're going to be back with all of you again in 2 weeks for our final show of the year, which is going to be a holiday special. We have the Gorsey family with us. We also have Velvet Wells and a very special guest from the North Pole.
I miss the Gorsey family.
Well, watch the show
lovely.
next week, and you can see them a little bit.
And now to sing
Velvet
us
Wells
out,
is amazing.
everyone, put your hands together for Kristin Mueller-Heaslip.
All right. So, my last song is the bookend to the song that I started with. So instead of talking all about your crazy neighbors, this one's about all of the crappy jobs you have to have when you're trying to make it in the arts. M'as-tu connu mon changeant un bal basé sur le métro pour insister vaine d'institut, me faudrait de la vertu, mais romans, non ironie, et je n'ai pas de caractère. M'as-tu connu mon chambaron au coin de la recoquillère, tablier rendu, notre hiver. M'as-tu marché, malais de WC, je l'étais sans fiel, dit Malice, et dans le foire au pain d'épices, défenseur, juge de paix, officier, comme on dit ton fils, au Richelieu et à la paix. And we'll see you on December 12th. This is a talk show. Good night, everybody.